The phone slipped from my fingers, hitting the kitchen counter with a sharp crack. Those 3 little dots kept pulsing on Connor's screen, taunting me with their rhythmic dance. Someone was typing, deleting, typing again. I shouldn't have looked. Shouldn't have noticed the notification. Shouldn't have touched his phone at all. I'm Addison, and until 30 seconds ago, I thought I knew what trust meant. Mom? Everything okay? Chloe's voice drifted down from upstairs, probably hearing the clatter of the phone. Fine, honey. Just dropped something. My voice stayed steady, a teacher's practiced control. 16 years of marriage, and here I was, hands trembling over a text message that read, "Same time tonight? I'll wear that thing you like." The message disappeared before my eyes, deleted. Of course. Connor always was meticulous about covering his tracks. Even the way he arranged his shoes by the door, perfectly aligned, spoke of someone who liked things just so. Need help with dinner? Chloe appeared in the doorway, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, Connor's eyes staring back at me from her face. The similarity made my stomach turn. Actually, yes. I needed a witness, someone to ground me in reality. Could you chop these onions? She moved beside me, our elbows touching as we worked. The kitchen filled with the sharp scent of onions, masking the acid taste of bile rising in my throat. Dad working late again? Her knife tapped steadily against the cutting board. Bar's busy on Thursdays. The lie came easily, practiced over months of similar conversations. But now the words felt like glass in my mouth. My phone buzzed. Connor. Traffic's terrible. Don't wait up. Chloe peered over my shoulder. 3rd Thursday this month. I looked at her sharply. She'd been counting. Mason noticed too, she added, scraping onions into the pot. He pretends not to, but he does. The front door opened, and Mason's backpack hit the floor with its usual thud. His footsteps dragged toward the kitchen, heavy with teenage exhaustion. Dad working late? He asked, reaching for an apple. Chloe's knife paused mid-chop. The silence stretched until I forced words through numb lips. Yes, honey. The bar's busy. Mason bit into his apple, eyes fixed on something distant. Weird. I walked past there after practice. Place looked pretty dead. The wooden spoon in my hand snapped. Both kids stared at the broken pieces. Mom? Chloe's voice was careful, measured. It's nothing. I tossed the splintered wood into the trash. Just old. Everything gets old eventually, doesn't it? Mason disappeared upstairs, but Chloe lingered, her presence both comfort and witness to my unraveling. You know, she said, voice low, Aunt Rachel mentioned this guy, Peter something. He's good at finding things out. Things people want to keep hidden. My hands stilled over the stove. Your aunt talks too much. Maybe. Chloe shrugged. Or maybe she talks just enough. I turned to face my daughter, really looking at her. When had she grown so perceptive? So strong? Sometimes, she continued, the worst part isn't what you find out. It's pretending you don't already know. The timer buzzed, making us both jump. Dinner would be ready soon, a meal for 3 instead of 4. Again. I picked up Connor's phone, still lying where it fell. The screen had cracked, a spider web of lines distorting his lock screen, our family photo from last summer's vacation. All of us smiling, none of us seeing the fractures already forming. Mom? Chloe touched my arm. What are you going to do? I placed the broken phone exactly where Connor always left it, aligned perfectly with the counter's edge. I'm going to serve dinner. And then I'm going to make a phone call. To Peter. To Peter. The decision settled in my chest like a stone. Because you're right, honey. The pretending has to stop. Peter's office smelled like old coffee and secrets. The leather chair creaked under me as I pulled out Connor's credit card statements, copies I'd made while he slept. My hands didn't shake anymore. That was new. These are from the last 6 months, I said, spreading them across Peter's desk. Notice anything? He adjusted his reading glasses, weathered fingers tracing the lines of numbers. The Chandler Hotel. Every Thursday. He glanced up. Expensive taste. We've never stayed there. The words tasted bitter. Not once in 16 years. Peter nodded, his silence more telling than words. I'd known him since before Connor, back when he'd helped my sister through her divorce. Now here I was, following her footsteps. My phone buzzed. Connor. Running late tonight. Business meeting. Of course you are, I muttered, switching the phone off. Have you confronted him? Peter gathered the statements into a neat pile. Not yet. The door opened, cutting me off. Jenna stood in the doorway, her college backpack slung over one shoulder. Uncle Peter, I brought those files you, oh. Her eyes widened. Aunt Addison. The room suddenly felt too small. Jenna, my niece, Connor's part-time bartender, the girl who'd practically grown up in our house, shifted uncomfortably. Just dropping off some paperwork, I said, too quickly. For the school fundraiser. Right. Jenna's laugh was nervous, high-pitched. I should go. My shift at the bar starts soon. Thursday night. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Must be busy. Something flickered across her face, guilt? Fear? She practically fled the office. Peter watched her go, his expression unreadable. That's interesting. What is? The bar's closed on Thursdays. Has been for months. Renovation work. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. Connor told me. He said. I know what he said. Peter's voice was gentle. Question is, what are you going to do about it? My phone lit up again, Chloe. Mom, Dad's home early. He's asking questions about where you are. I stood, gathering the statements. I need proof. Real proof. Addison. Peter's tone made me pause. Be careful. Sometimes the truth is worse than we imagine. At home, Connor was in the kitchen, cooking. He only cooked when he felt guilty. Where were you? His smile was perfect, practiced. I tried calling. Parent-teacher conferences. The lie came easily now. You know how it is. He nodded, stirring something that smelled like garlic and deception. Jenna's coming for dinner. Thought it would be nice, family time. My heart stopped. Jenna? Yeah, she seemed upset earlier. Said she could use some family support. Chloe appeared in the doorway, her eyes finding mine. I invited Mason's friend over too. For support. Connor's spatula paused mid-stir. What friend? Jake. His dad's a lawyer. Chloe's voice was innocent, but her message was clear. She was building witnesses. The more the merrier, I said, matching Connor's smile with one of my own. Two could play at this game of perfect families. Later, as everyone gathered around the dinner table, I watched. Watched how Jenna wouldn't meet my eyes. How Connor's hand shook slightly as he passed the bread. How Mason kept looking between them, picking up on the tension none of us would name. So, Jenna, I said, cutting into my chicken. How's work at the bar? Good. She stabbed a piece of broccoli. Quiet on Thursdays. Connor's fork clattered against his plate. Chloe kicked me under the table, a warning or encouragement, I couldn't tell. Funny, Mason said, since it's closed for renovations. The silence that followed was deafening. Connor recovered first. Different sections, different days. You know how construction goes. But the crack was there, visible now. In his voice, in Jenna's rigid posture, in the way everyone at the table suddenly found their plates fascinating. I stood, gathering empty glasses. Who wants dessert? I made Connor's favorite. Actually, Jenna pushed back her chair, I should go. But you've barely eaten, Connor protested. Our eyes met across the table, and for a moment, I saw fear in his. He knew. He knew that I knew. Stay, Jenna, I said softly. Family should stick together, don't you think? The timer in the kitchen went off, shrill and insistent. Someone had to break first. It was just a matter of time. The Chandler Hotel receipt burned in my pocket as I walked through its marble lobby. Everything gleamed, the floors, the fixtures, the fake smiles of the staff. The kind of place that charged extra for secrets. Can I help you? The receptionist's nameplate read, Sarah. I hope so. I slid my driver's license across the counter. My husband's been staying here. Connor Walsh? I need a copy of his latest bill for our tax records. Sarah's fingers hesitated over her keyboard. I'm sorry, but we can't. Please. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. I found charges on our credit card. If there's been fraud, I need to report it. Her expression shifted, sympathy, maybe recognition. She'd probably seen this scene before. One moment. She typed, then frowned. That's odd. The charges are under a different name, but the card matches your husband's. My throat tightened. What name? James Peterson. She turned the screen. Room 412, every Thursday for the past 3 months. James Peterson. Connor's grandfather's name. The man he'd always said he wanted to honor. There's a standing reservation for this Thursday, Sarah added. Shall I print the details? I nodded, numb. The printer hummed, spitting out paper that felt like sandpaper in my hands. My phone buzzed, Peter. Got something. Meet me at the bar. The bar was dark, closed for renovations that showed no sign of progress. Peter waited in his car across the street. Look at this. He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos, Connor entering the hotel, Jenna following 20 minutes later. Both carrying overnight bags. When? Last Thursday. Peter's voice was gentle. There's more. The next photo showed Connor at an ATM, withdrawing cash. Then at a jewelry store, emerging with a small bag. The bracelet, I whispered. The one Jenna had been wearing at dinner. Addison. Peter touched my arm. The hotel receipts, the jewelry, it's not the whole story. Look at the last photo. It was grainy, taken through a window. Connor and Jenna at a table, papers spread between them. One looked like a passport. He's planning something, Peter said. Something bigger than an affair. My phone lit up, Connor. Working late again. Don't wait up. I looked at the hotel reservation in my hand. 3 hours from now, room 412. I need to see that room. Peter's eyes widened. Addison, don't. Sarah will help me. My voice sounded strange, distant. She understands. The hotel key card felt heavy in my hand. Sarah had barely hesitated when I explained. Another woman who knew the taste of betrayal. Room 412 was pristine, waiting for its Thursday guests. I moved through it like a ghost, touching nothing, seeing everything. 2 water glasses by the bed. A forgotten hair tie on the bathroom counter. Jenna's brand. The closet door was ajar. Inside, a small safe stood open. Empty, except for a folded paper that had slipped behind it. My hands shook as I retrieved it. A bank statement from the Cayman Islands. Connor's grandfather's name again, but recent dates. Large deposits. My phone buzzed again. Chloe, Mom, where are you? Dad came home, but left again. He's acting weird. Then Mason, Mom, I heard Dad on the phone. Something about tickets. And finally Peter, get out of there. Now. Footsteps in the hallway. Keys jingling. I slipped into the bathroom, heart pounding. The door opened. You're early. Connor's voice. Had to make sure everything was ready. Jenna. Tickets are confirmed. Once the transfer clears next week, we're gone. What about Addison? The kids? A pause. They'll be fine. The divorce papers are ready. She'll get the house, enough money to keep quiet. She's not stupid, Connor. She knows something's wrong. By the time she figures it out, we'll be gone. 3 million buys a lot of distance. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a laugh or a scream. 3 million. Our life reduced to a number. My phone buzzed silently. Peter again, police are on their way. Anonymous tip about fraud. Stay hidden. Through the bathroom door, I heard champagne being poured. Celebrations beginning. Endings too. I touched the bank statement in my pocket. Sometimes the worst betrayals aren't about the heart at all. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. In the other room, glasses clinked together in a toast to futures that would never come. The police station hummed with fluorescent lights and half-truths. I sat across from Detective Morris, the Cayman Islands bank statement between us, while Connor spent his first night in a holding cell. $3 million, Morris said, tapping the paper. That's a lot of renovation money. Funny how expensive lies can be. My voice didn't shake anymore. That should have scared me. Mrs. Walsh, we'll need you to sign these statements. He slid papers across his desk. But there's something else you should know. A knock interrupted us. Jenna stood in the doorway, wearing that damned bracelet. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged. I'm ready to talk, she said. Morris nodded. Have a seat. I stood to leave, but Jenna caught my arm. Stay. Please. You need to hear this. The bracelet glinted under the harsh lights. Connor's grandfather's name echoed in my head, James Peterson. A dead man's identity used to steal from the living. The money, Jenna started, then stopped. Swallowed. It wasn't just from the bar. Morris leaned forward. Go on. Connor. He's been running something bigger. The bar was just a front. She twisted the bracelet around her wrist. I thought I was helping with bookkeeping, but then I saw the real numbers. My phone buzzed. Chloe, Mom, there are people at the house. They're asking about Dad's business partners. Then Mason, Mom, they're taking Dad's computers. Mrs. Walsh. Morris was watching me. Your children are safe. We have officers there. Jenna's voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Aunt Addison. He said if I didn't help, he'd tell everyone about the accident. What accident? She pulled up her sleeve. Above the bracelet, a long scar traced her forearm. Last year, at the bar. A customer got rough. Connor. He handled it. Said he'd protect me, but then he started asking for favors. The room tilted sideways. Connor, my Connor, who color-coded his sock drawer and remembered every anniversary. Who apparently buried bodies and laundered money. The hotel meetings, I said, were for business. Jenna's laugh was hollow. The kind you can't do in broad daylight. Morris spread out more papers. We've traced connections to 3 other establishments. All using the same pattern. My phone lit up again. Peter, don't react. Connor made bail. His brother posted it. The brother we hadn't spoken to in 5 years. The one Connor said was trouble. Detective, my voice was steady, I need protection for my children. Already arranged. He gestured to an officer. We'll have someone escort you. No. Jenna stood abruptly. You can't go home. Connor has a backup plan. He always has a backup plan. The bracelet caught the light again, and suddenly I understood. It's not just jewelry, is it? She unclasped it, handed it to Morris. Look inside the links. The detective examined it under a magnifying glass. USB drives. Clever. Everything's there, Jenna whispered. Every transaction, every name. He gave it to me as insurance, but really it was a trap. If anything happened, I'd go down too. My phone buzzed one final time, an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. Connor's voice, even in text, was perfectly controlled. Like his sock drawer. Like his lies. Detective, I stood, gathering my coat, I need to make a call. In the hallway, I dialed Chloe. Pack bags for you and Mason. Peter's coming to get you. Mom? Her voice was small. Are we ever coming back? I watched through the window as Morris bagged the bracelet, proof of both corruption and corruption's cure. Not until it's safe. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Not until I finish what your father started. Behind me, Jenna approached, her wrist bare where the bracelet had been. I want to help. For real this time. I turned to face her, seeing not my niece, but a mirror, another woman trapped in Connor's web, looking for redemption. Then help me understand, I said. Everything. Because sometimes, the only way to end a story is to go back to its beginning. Even if that beginning was built on graves we never knew we were dancing on. Peter's safe house smelled like dust and old promises. I watched the surveillance feed on his laptop, my children asleep in the next room. On screen, Connor paced his office at the bar, phone pressed to his ear. The cameras were Jenna's idea, Peter said, adjusting the volume. She planted them yesterday. The audio crackled. Connor's voice filled the room. No, listen. The police don't have everything. The bracelet's just insurance. Yes, I know what happens if, don't threaten me. Jenna sat beside me, her bare wrist a reminder of what we'd given up. There's more coming. Watch. On screen, Connor's brother Marcus entered the frame. The prodigal son, returned at last. You promised this would be clean, Marcus said. Now the cops are crawling everywhere. Addison doesn't know the whole story. Connor's laugh was ugly. She thinks it's just about money and a cheap affair. Let her. My fingers curled into fists. Beside me, Jenna tensed. And the kids? Marcus asked. Leverage, if I need it. Connor straightened his perfectly pressed shirt. Addison won't risk them. The laptop screen cracked under my grip. Peter gently pried my hands away. Mom? Chloe stood in the doorway, Mason behind her. They'd heard everything. Go pack, I said. We're leaving. No. Chloe moved closer, eyes fixed on the screen. We're done running. On the feed, Connor pulled out a familiar leather notebook, my grandmother's diary, the one thing I'd saved from my childhood home. See this? Connor waved it at Marcus. Everything we need is in here. The old property deeds, the original contracts. Once we have those, the development deal goes through, Marcus finished. And the money gets cleaned through the construction. Perfect crime. My grandmother's land. The acres of forest she'd protected, that I'd inherited. That Connor had been trying to get me to sign over for months. He can't access it without your signature, Peter said quietly. No. I watched Connor slide the diary into his safe. But he can make me sign. Jenna stood abruptly. I need to go back. What? No. The word came out sharp. He trusts me now. Thinks I'm terrified of the police finding out about everything. She touched her scarred arm. I can get into that safe. It's too dangerous. But even as I said it, I knew she was right. Mason stepped forward, his quiet voice steady. Dad always said I was just like him. Maybe it's time to use that. What do you mean? He'll expect me to come home. The dutiful son, worried about his father. His smile was pure Connor. I can distract him while Jenna gets the diary. Absolutely not. But Chloe was already nodding. I'll create a scene at school, she said. He'll have to come deal with it. Administrative emergency, parent conference. You've all lost your minds. I looked at Peter for support, but he was studying the surveillance feed thoughtfully. It could work, he said. With the right timing. On screen, Connor opened another bottle of whiskey, his movements precise even in destruction. Just like everything else he'd torn apart. My phone buzzed. Detective Morris, Connor's brother, made some interesting calls. You need to move. Now. Another message followed, and Mrs. Walsh. Whatever you're planning. Make it count. I looked at my children, seeing not victims but warriors. At Jenna, no longer the manipulated niece but a survivor seeking redemption. At Peter, who'd watched my sister's destruction and wouldn't let history repeat. Tomorrow, I said finally. We do it tomorrow. And then? Chloe asked. I watched Connor on screen, drinking to victories he hadn't won yet. Then we take everything. Not just the diary or the evidence. Everything. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction, building something stronger from the ashes of what was burned. Mom? Mason's voice was soft. Are we bad people for doing this? No, honey. I pulled him close, feeling Chloe and Jenna join the embrace. We're just finally playing by his rules. On the laptop, Connor raised his glass in a silent toast, unaware that his perfect plan was about to meet its perfect destruction. The plan fell apart like everything else in my life, quickly and without mercy. I stood in Connor's office, my grandmother's diary clutched to my chest, while Mason lay unconscious on the floor. The cut above his eye still bled. Sit down, Addison. Connor's voice was silk over steel. The gun in his hand didn't waver. He's 14, I whispered. He's your son. He's a liability. Like mother, like son. He gestured to the chair. Now sit. Through the office window, I could see Jenna being led away by Marcus, her attempt to crack the safe having failed spectacularly. Chloe's diversionary tactic at school had only bought us minutes, not the hours we'd needed. The diary. Connor held out his free hand. Unless you want Mason to wake up with more than just a headache. My fingers traced the worn leather cover. Inside were the property deeds, the contracts, my grandmother's legacy. And now, Connor's ticket to millions. You never loved me, did you? The question surprised us both. His laugh was familiar, yet strange. I loved what you represented. The perfect wife, the perfect cover. He stepped closer. Sign the papers, and this ends quietly. Like that customer at the bar. The one Jenna told me about. Something flickered in his eyes. She should have kept her mouth shut. Like you kept quiet about the money laundering. The development deals. Careful, darling. The gun shifted toward Mason. You're not the only one with evidence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Peter's signal, the police were in position. I just needed to keep Connor talking. Why Jenna? The question had haunted me for weeks. Because she was easy. Vulnerable. Just like you were, 16 years ago. His smile turned cruel. Remember? The grieving teacher, so lost after her grandmother's death. So eager for someone to take control. Mason stirred, groaning. Connor's finger tightened on the trigger. The papers, Addison. Now. I placed the diary on his desk, opened it to the marked page. My hands didn't shake as I picked up the pen. That's my girl. Connor's voice dripped satisfaction. Always so. The window exploded inward. Connor fired, once, twice. I threw myself over Mason as glass rained down. Police. Drop the weapon. But Connor was already moving, grabbing the diary with one hand, shooting with the other. I heard Peter shout, heard returning fire. Then silence. I lifted my head. Connor was gone, taking the diary with him. Blood stained the carpet where I knelt, Mason's, mine, maybe both. Mom? Mason's eyes fluttered open. Did we get it? I helped him sit up, checking his wound. No, baby. We didn't. But I saw Jenna. He winced. Before Dad hit me. She had something in her hand. Peter burst through the door, gun drawn. Addison. Are you? He's gone. I pressed my sleeve against Mason's cut. He has the diary. Peter holstered his weapon, a strange smile playing at his lips. Does he? From his jacket, he pulled out familiar worn leather. My grandmother's diary. How? The one Connor took was a copy. Jenna appeared in the doorway, Marcus notably absent. We switched them last week. The real documents are safe. But the safe. My head spun. The plan was exactly what Connor expected. Peter helped Mason to his feet. So we gave him what he wanted to see. Through the broken window, sirens wailed. Connor would be running, thinking he had won. Thinking he had destroyed me one final time. Mom? Mason leaned against me. What happens now? I opened the diary, passed the property deeds to the last page. There, in my grandmother's handwriting, was a name I hadn't seen in years. A name Connor didn't know about. Now, I said, we finish this. For real. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't where you end. Sometimes it's where you finally see the truth, not just about others, but about yourself. And what I saw was crystal clear. Connor hadn't married a victim 16 years ago. He'd married a survivor. He just didn't know it yet. The Chandler Hotel's penthouse suite looked different in daylight. Colder. Like Connor's smile as he watched me enter, his fake diary still clutched in his hand. I wondered how long it would take you to find me. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Always the perfect host. Where's Marcus? Gone. With the money. Connor's laugh held no humor. Turns out betrayal runs in the family. I moved closer, noting the packed bags by the door. Like father, like son. Speaking of sons. He slid one glass toward me. How's Mason's head? My fingers itched to grab the crystal tumbler and smash it into his perfect teeth. Instead, I pulled out my phone, playing the video Jenna had recorded last year, the accident at the bar. Connor's expression didn't change as he watched himself push the drunk customer down the stairs. Watched Jenna scream. Watched himself stage the scene. Insurance, he said simply. Like everything else. Including me. Especially you. He closed the diary. Though I have to admit, you surprised me. All these years, I thought you were just convenient. Movement in the hallway caught my eye, Peter's signal. Everything was in place. The property deeds, I said. They're worthless without my signature. About that. Connor's smile widened. Remember our anniversary trip to Vegas? That contract you signed while slightly intoxicated? My blood ran cold. You didn't. Power of attorney. Limited, but enough. He pulled out another document. Everything transfers tomorrow. The land, the development rights, all of it. There's just one problem. I finally picked up the whiskey glass. You're reading the wrong diary. The door burst open. Detective Morris entered, followed by Peter and, most surprisingly, Marcus. "Hello, brother," Marcus said. "Sorry about the money. Had to make it look good." Connor's composure cracked. "What?" I opened my grandmother's real diary to the last page. "Remember when you asked about my grandfather? The one who disappeared before I was born?" Understanding dawned in his eyes as he read the name, James Peterson. "Your grandfather's identity," he whispered. "The one I used for money laundering? Tax evasion? Murder?" Morris stepped forward. "We have it all, Mr. Walsh. Including your Vegas paperwork. Forgery's a serious charge." Connor lunged for the balcony. I moved without thinking, years of suppressed rage finding their target. The whiskey glass shattered against his temple. He stumbled, fell. "That's for Mason," I said. Peter and Morris moved to restrain him, but Connor was laughing through the blood. "You think this changes anything?" He spat. "You're still the grieving teacher. The convenient wife. The perfect victim." "No." Jenna appeared in the doorway, holding a familiar bracelet. "She's the woman who taught me to stop being afraid." The USB drives hidden in the bracelet's links contained everything, every transaction, every threat, every carefully orchestrated manipulation. Including his confession from moments ago. "You recorded." Connor's mask finally shattered completely. "Like you taught me," Jenna said. "Insurance." Morris read him his rights while Peter checked his restraints. Through it all, Connor kept his eyes on me. "I did love you," he said quietly. "In my way." "I know." I gathered the real diary, the evidence of his crimes. "That's what makes this perfect." "What does?" "Knowing that for 16 years, you thought you were destroying me." I moved to the door. "When really, I was learning how to destroy you." "Mom?" Chloe waited in the hallway, Mason beside her. Both stronger than I'd ever been at their age. "It's done," I said. Behind us, Connor called my name one last time. I didn't turn around. Some endings don't need an audience. In the elevator, Mason touched the fading cut above his eye. Was it worth it? I looked at my children, at Jenna, at the family we'd pieced together from broken trust and shared survival. "Ask me tomorrow," I said. Because some victories take time to feel real. And some scars need to fade before you can see them as battle wounds rather than weaknesses. But tomorrow was finally ours to decide. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in spring. I watched Connor being led away in handcuffs, his perfect posture finally broken. He didn't look back. Neither did I. "Ready?" Peter held out my grandmother's diary. Inside the courtroom, the evidence had spoken for itself. The USB drives, the financial records, the video confession. But it was the diary that had sealed everything, my grandfather's identity, the original property deeds, the truth Connor had tried to steal. Almost. I turned to face the gathered press. They wanted their story, the betrayed wife, the corrupt businessman, the perfect family shattered. But that wasn't my story to tell anymore. Jenna stepped forward, her scarred arm now worn like a badge. "I'll handle the statements." "You don't have to," I said. "I do." She squared her shoulders. "For both of us." Mason touched the fading cut above his eye. "Can we go home now?" Home. Not the house Connor had chosen, with its perfect lawn and carefully arranged furniture. Something new. Something ours. Actually, Chloe pulled out a set of keys, my grandmother's old house keys. "I have an idea about that." The property stretched before us, acres of forest Connor had tried to steal. The old house stood exactly as I remembered, waiting. "It needs work," Peter observed. Good. I watched Mason wander toward the creek where I'd played as a child. We need something to build. Mom? Chloe's voice was hesitant. There's something else you should know. She handed me her phone. On screen was a message from Connor's brother Marcus. The money he stole from you, I found it. All of it. What do you want to do? Peter asked. I looked at my children, at Jenna, at the home that had sheltered 3 generations of survivors. I want to build something he can't break. The contractor arrived that afternoon. As she surveyed the property, I opened the diary one last time. Past the deeds and documents, past the evidence that had destroyed Connor's empire, to a letter I'd never shown anyone. Not even in court. My dearest Addison, my grandmother's handwriting flowed across the page. By the time you read this, you'll understand why your grandfather disappeared. Why I had to protect what was ours. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to fight back. Mom? Mason called from the creek. Look what I found. He held up a piece of sea glass, smoothed by water and time. Green, like his eyes. Like Connor's eyes. Keep it, I said. Some things are worth remembering. Even the bad stuff. Especially the bad stuff. I touched his healed cut. It shows us who we really are. Jenna joined us, her phone buzzing with interview requests. They want to know what happens next. Tell them the truth, Chloe said. Tell them we're building something. The contractor's estimate arrived, repairs, renovations, new beginnings. All funded by Connor's hidden accounts, now frozen and seized. Justice had a price tag, after all. There's one more thing, Peter said quietly. He handed me an envelope, divorce papers, already signed. Connor's final surrender. I didn't open them. Some endings don't need witnesses. Instead, I watched my family explore their new home. Mason by the creek, finding pieces of the past. Chloe on the porch, planning the future. Jenna with her camera, documenting everything Connor had failed to destroy. You know, Peter said, revenge usually leaves people empty. This isn't revenge. I picked up a piece of sea glass Mason had missed. This is reconstruction. The sun set behind the trees Connor had tried to sell, casting shadows that looked like possibilities. Tomorrow would bring contractors and questions, reporters and responsibilities. But tonight, in this moment, I held my grandmother's diary and my children's future in the same hands. And neither felt heavy anymore. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying what hurt you. It's in building something so strong, so beautiful, that the hurt becomes just another layer in its foundation. And we were already building.